Everyone knows that Jeep is synonymous with off-roading, but I think that the brand is watering down that legacy, well, with some of its small crossovers like this one. However, of course, the brand doesn't believe that, and they're trying to prove me wrong. So we're out here in Moab, Utah to see if the Trailhawk badge on this Compass actually brings along that legendary Jeep performance. So we're just finishing up a day out here on the trails in Moab. And unlike a lot of the times, automakers will roll out new vehicles and then they'll kind of baby them and they'll let us on some really kind of weak off-road trails. Jeep did it right, bringing us to a sort of, beginner intermediate trail, but for this Compass Trailhawk, we really pushed this thing today. So opting for the Trailhawk model is definitely a lot more than just paint and plastic. You get 8.5 inches of ground clearance, which is about half an inch more than four-wheel drive models and a full inch more than front-wheel drive models. You also get redesigned fascias in the front and rear to increase your approach and departure angles, and the approach angle compared to the base Compass actually doubles from about 15 degrees to just over 30 degrees, which for a small crossover like this is a pretty respectable number. Climbing through some of the rocks today, I can tell you that those angles were appreciated. There were a few times when we could have used a bit more clearance, but for the most part, this thing stayed up and well clear of the rocks. The Trailhawk also comes with Jeep's Select Terrain system, which will tailor the four-wheel drive to different situations like mud or sand, or in our case today, we were using the rock mode. Now, as we were climbing a lot of those rocks, first of all, it's pretty obvious that there's not a lot of articulation here in the Compass. It's pretty easy to lift a wheel. But in rock mode, you can feel it redistributing the power pretty quickly and pretty well. So there were a few times when you kind of get hung up on the rocks, sort of bury your foot into the throttle, it would sort of recalibrate the power, and then you'd climb up and be on your way. The Compass also has four-wheel drive low, although it's not a true four-wheel drive low because there's no actual transfer case in here. All it's doing is making sure you're in the lowest gear at all times, which is especially important because the Compass uses a 9-speed transmission. So if you get any speed on the trail, it just wants to upshift and you lose all your torque and all your power. Speaking of power, this 2.4-liter multi-air four-cylinder makes 180 horsepower and 175 pound-feet of torque, and driving out to the trail today on public roads going through town, it's more than enough power. It never really leaves you wanting. It's once you get on the trail that it starts to feel a little underpowered. And the real issue that I found was climbing some of those steep rocks, you kind of get hung up. And rather than being able to just dial in a little bit of throttle, you have to really bury that accelerator to get up and over those obstacles, making it a little harder to drive this thing smooth. Now, in kind of typical Jeep fashion, we have a pretty light steering rack in this Compass, and it's nice for when you're going over those rocks. It's never trying to rip this wheel out of your hands. It never gets too jerky or anything like that. After spending a day yesterday in Wranglers and Grand Cherokees out on the trail, I also have to say that I like the dimensions of this Compass. It's always nice to be in a nice small off-roader. You never feel like you're not gonna fit through something. This Trailhawk also has a hill descent and ascent control, which lets you forget about the gas and the brake. It will handle your speed. All you have to do is focus on your hands. Now, there are some hardcore off-roaders that kind of write off these features, but they're always nice to have because you don't have to use them, but if you do want them, they just take a lot of the stress out of off-roading. So we're back on the pavement now, heading back into Moab, and I think I just realized what this Compass is all about. Hitting the pavement, it's nice and quiet and comfortable, and it just drives like a nice little crossover. If you put this thing up to some of its competitors, it's totally gonna hold up on-road, but I can almost guarantee you that there's nothing else in this segment that is gonna keep up with this Compass off-road. So you might not exactly be out there on the trail, dominating the rocks, but it's gonna make it through, and that's really the key. This is the vehicle for someone who needs a daily driver, needs a commuter, and every now and then is gonna tackle something a little bit tricky. And the interior on this Compass really drives home that point too. You get some nice colored bezels, you get these nice Trailhawk seats which have these mesh inserts. They're pretty comfy and pretty supportive. And you get the full 8.4-inch Uconnect infotainment system, which is still one of my favorites on the market, and it's been given a little bit of an upgrade for this year. It looks a little bit different, and it's still lightning fast to respond, and I love that about it. Also included in the package are these Falcon all-terrain tires, and in some of the really soft sand we were in today, I was actually pretty impressed with the grip. We didn't have too much wheel slippage, and on the bare rocks, they had no problem at all. So look, if you want to tackle some of those scary sounding trails here in Moab like Hell's Revenge, yeah, you're not going to want a Jeep Compass. But if you're looking for a competent daily driver that has above average off-road capability, this is the vehicle for you.